Hey guys, Jake Carlson here, host of the Modern Leadership Podcast. Are you ready to focus on amplifying your leadership superpowers? Let's go! Hello, my friends and elite achievers. I say friend, and I mean that. It is so great to be back with you. Welcome to the Modern Leadership Podcast. Let me start this episode with a question. Do you ever feel like you are on autopilot? Let me give you an example. A few years back when I was working in tax, I remember coming home from work, my wife asking how the day went and what I did, and I had to really think about it. I mean, really think about it. I couldn't even remember what I'd done just 1 hour prior. It was all routine, passionless accomplishments, action without intention. Does that ever happen to you? Come on, be honest. I thought so. And that is why I'm so excited to introduce today's guest and awesome achiever, Sheila Sutherland. Sheila is the founder of Reignite Your Purpose and is on a mission to create a movement of inspired individuals who are reconnecting with who they really are by creating a solid foundation in their relationship with self. She's a fellow podcaster and a natural-born leader, combining knowledge, experience, and education. Sheila, awesome to have you with us. Let's reignite our purpose. Are you ready?
Oh, I am so ready. I was born for it.
That's fantastic. Before we jump into this reigniting of our purpose, which I'm so excited to talk about, what did we miss in that intro by way of personal and hobbies or things that you're passionate about?
Oh my goodness, that's a big question. How much time do we have here? I think a little bit of background that I'd like to give you is kind of where I was before Reignite Your Purpose happened. And for me, I was the one I grew up in a very, blue collar family in northern British Columbia here in Canada. And it was, everyone was involved with the forestry or mining industry, and education really wasn't a high priority. But for me, somewhere along the line, I made this decision young that I wanted something different. I saw the way our family was and how unfortunate. I grew up surrounded by a lot of alcohol and drug abuse. And I chose that that wasn't for me. I needed something completely different. And that ended up causing me to become a very hyperachiever. I was always the one that was trying to make sure that everybody was okay. I was the referee. I was the peacemaker. I did not like conflict at all. And I was taking care of everybody else, but I wasn't taking care of me. And that ended up having some detrimental results for me in the long run, but it was what became the catalyst for what Reignite Your Purpose is today.
So as you look back on your past a little bit and growing up, and you talked about how you kind of turned toward that education. You grew up in this blue collar background and you saw education as an opportunity for you to really make a name for yourself. Was there a certain subject or topic that you got fascinated with and built from there, or was it just learning in general?
No, it was a topic in general. I remember it was this, we had these people come into our classroom as special guest speakers. And they were talking about killer whales. And it was at that moment I decided that's where I needed to be. I needed to be near the ocean, on the ocean, in the ocean, anything to do with the ocean. So I ended up moving, it was about 600 or 700 miles away, because that was the closest university at that point in time, to study marine biology.
So what was it about this presentation as you look back? Was it the animals? Was it the ocean? Was it the way that they presented, the way they stood, the mentorship that they gave? Are you able to pinpoint kind of what it was about their presentation that really jumped out to you?
The unfortunate part is I can't remember themselves, like the people themselves, but they inspired me in some way. And I had always had a huge love for animals and for nature. That was just something I always view that as I got that from my dad, and for the ocean as well, because he grew up on the East Coast. And even though at that point in time, I had never even seen the ocean, I hadn't even laid eyes on it ever. I was just drawn to it. I was pulled to it. And I knew that's where I had to be. I didn't know why, but that just became my compass, that nothing was going to stop me at that moment. And it became my sole drive that I was going to get there.
And there's a couple of things that you said that really stand out to me, and it really goes down this path of mentorship or seeking inspiration, advice, and learning from others. And the two things that I wanted to pull out is, number one, you didn't recognize at the time, and still to this day, you don't remember those people, the people that came in and made the presentation, but they had an impact on you. And I think in life and as we develop, we need to be conscious that there are opportunities for us to develop, learn, and grow that we might not expect at the time to be that. You're in a place, you're at a time, you're having an experience that ultimately changed the trajectory of your life, and you can't even place who those people were, which leads to the second point that I wanted to pull out of that, and that is oftentimes people are watching us as leaders. People are observing our behavior, our actions, when we get up in front of a group and make a presentation, there could be a child there learning about marine biology for the first time and saying, I'm going to move 600 miles away to be near the ocean and change the entire trajectory of my life because of what you said. And so that's the important distinctions that I wanted to pull out. Now, Sheila, I love this Reignite Your Purpose. I told you when I was on your show that I always get it confused with reignite your passion and your purpose. But this time I want to talk about something a little different. I want to talk about this term reigniting, because reigniting signifies that at one point you were on fire. So can you back us up and talk to us about how you came up with this name, the reignite portion of it, and then tell us what it means moving forward?
Yeah, I do. Exactly. I believe what you said there. At one point in time, usually when, we're first taking those first big leaps into adulthood, we're on fire at that point. We think we have the world by the tail. We know where we're going, what we're going to do. Even when, in the grand scheme of things, we probably don't know anything. But at that point in time, ignorance is bliss. And we're just going for it and nothing is going to stop you. And that's how I felt. I would always tell people that, I had it planned from about the age of 12 that, going to university, this is what I was going to do. This was the plan and nothing was going to stop me. And I was that bulldozer. But somewhere along the line, things, life happened and that I got knocked off course. And, there's no way that we can plan for some of those things. Sometimes we can't avoid them, right? Because we can't control our outside world. So things are going to happen. And I found, looking back, I didn't know, or I didn't have the skills to deal with them as they were happening. So they ended up just getting layered, like the layers of the onion on top of everything and on top of the initial passion that I had, till eventually, decades later, it was to the point where I felt like that inner light or that inner flame that I had was to the point of getting snuffed out. And that started showing up in I was angry all the time. I was just frustrated. I felt like the world was against me. Nothing was going right. Everything was a fight and a struggle. And I was getting so tired. And at that point in time, I didn't realize that I was doing it to myself. And it took me going through a couple of major traumas that kind of pulled that rug out from underneath me and gave me no choice, that I had to sit down and really take a good, hard, honest look at my life and go, you're going down the wrong path and you need to figure it out now. We're kind of at that fork in the road, and that decision has to be made, because if you stay on the path that you're going, it's not going to end up well.
And I think a lot of the listeners can relate to what you're talking about. Maybe not some of the same specific experiences that you had, but they can relate to this. Hey, I started out excited. And I think even in goal setting, and we talk about a lot about goals on this podcast, where we set our goals, we get excited. The day we write them down, the day we tell the world we're going to be an entrepreneur, or we're going to write a book, or we're going to record a podcast, we have all this excitement. And then the messy middle happens. And during that messy middle, we kind of get off course. Or as you mentioned, things that we can't necessarily anticipate or things that are unavoidable occur to us. But I'm reminded of this book, Great by Choice, written by Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great. And in that book, he talks a lot about luck. And he found that in his research that all people, all companies, his research was on companies, but I can relate this to people. All people experience equal amounts of good luck and bad luck. And things that help propel us forward and things that hold us back. And so I want to take you, Sheila, now. You're at this point where you're like, something's got to change. I've got to reignite my purpose. I've got to reignite my passion. And so I want to ask you how you did that. What are some of the steps that you took to reignite that flame?
One of the first things that I realized is that I didn't even know who I was. I was really, if someone was to ask me, I was really good at telling you all the roles that I play or all the different hats that I can wear during the day. But to give you descriptors as to who I was at my core, I had no idea. So I actually had to spend some time rediscovering me, and kind of digging myself out from all of other people's stuff that I felt that I had to carry. And I think that's one of the areas that I think quite a few of us kind of get stuck in, is we feel like we have to carry the burdens of other people. And I realized I had to let that go. It wasn't my stuff. And once I started peeling those layers away, you kind of get back to that initial girl that was excited about life and excited about her future. And it took some time to get there, but I was very glad that I was finally able to rediscover her.
Well, we get on this clarity path that you're talking about. How do we do that? So I agree with you that kind of like an onion, we get our core kind of buried sometimes, and we need to kind of dig down and get that out. Do you have some actionable steps that we can take to kind of get that clarity within our lives? I know you talk about self-care, self-love, and self-compassion. Let's talk about that a little bit and see if we can, hey, I've got my own problems. Let's see if we can peel them away and get down to the core of who Jake really is.
Well, for me, it was, I think, about a 5-step process that I did. And again, I didn't know this going on the onset. It was only with looking back, I kind of went, oh, this is what I did. Because honestly, I had no idea what I was doing when I was first setting out on this path. The idea of personal development was a completely foreign concept to me. So I was just immersing myself into everything that I possibly could to find what resonated with me. And for me, what I found, the first thing, which was what I consider a foundation piece, is truly learning the practice of gratitude. And, some people say, well, what do you mean? I'm grateful for all the things in my life. And I'm like, yeah, we are. But do you make it a daily practice? To get really good at something, you have to practice it. There's a certain process. So I actually had to retrain my mind to look for things to be grateful for every day, to help get me out of the woe is me, why is this happening to me kind of mode.
And I love this gratitude idea, this concept. And if I could just jump in and share just a quick story. As a family, we love this so much that we've started doing what we call 3 gratitudes at dinner. So we sit around the table and go around in a circle, and all of us give 3 things that happened during the day that we're grateful for. And I'll tell you, it's difficult sometimes for the kids. My kids are young, and they want to be grumpy and they want to be grouchy. They don't want to say what went good during the day, but we force them to dive down and really think about what happened during the day that we have to be grateful for. Even on a bad day, things are going well.
Oh, it's easy to be grateful on a good day. It's on, like you say, those days where you feel like the whole world is closing in on you. That's the day that it takes work to find the gratitude, but that's the one that is the most important. And like you said, I was doing a gratitude journal. That was what I did right before I went to bed, because I wanted that to be the last thing in my mind before I closed my eyes at night. And there was some days that I struggled trying to find something to be happy for. And then you kind of go to okay, well, I'm happy I've got a roof over my head. I've got, food in the fridge. But eventually it was kind of like, I need to find something else. I had to dig deeper instead of going with the very surfacey, type answers. And once you make that become a regular habit, it becomes so much easier. Your brain goes, oh, that's what we're supposed to be looking for. We're not supposed to be looking for the bad things, because that's our natural brain's default, is to look for the danger, to look for the negative things. So, but it doesn't take much to just retrain it and kind of go, this is where the path that I want to take. And you end up seeing that the more gratitude you practice, the more things that show up to be grateful for.
Like the law of attraction.
Exactly. Now, the next step that I was doing was what I call the practice of positivity. Now, we hear a lot about, the power of positive thinking, But that's not enough. And that was something that I had to learn. Like I spent a couple years just constantly trying to focus on having those positive thoughts. But I'm like, my life still isn't changing. On the outside world, I was being so positive, but I was like, I'd come home and I'm like, I still feel like crap. Like what's going on here? And I realized that in having a positive outlook in life isn't going to magically change everything for you. You still need to go back and deal with the things that need to be cleaned up, or finding what the root of some of what's going on that is challenging your way of being positive. So you have to deal with those things. You can't just smooth them over, put a Band-Aid on them and hope they just disappear. Yes, that would be the easy way, but we know that change isn't easy because, or else everyone out there would be doing it. It does take work, and and sometimes it can be a little painful, but you need to get to the root of some of the things of why you're in the place that you are in your life. And once you can turn that mirror on yourself and actually acknowledge them and go, oh, this is why this hasn't been working. And now that you know what hasn't worked, now you can put a plan into place to course correct, to allow it to work. And it just makes the practice of positivity so much easier.
And so is there a difference between having a bad day and being pessimistic?
I think so. Like we all have bad days. We're all going to. We're human. Again, we can't control our outside world, and so something is going to happen that's going to cause us to have a bad day. The thing is not allowing it to overtake us. And I think being pessimistic is that you actually just think that life is just always going to be bad.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I look at this positivity as really the attempt to continue moving forward. And some days you're going to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Some days you're going to go 2 steps back and 1 step forward. But the goal and idea here is to really see the future as bright, as positive, something that you can be drawn towards and to be moving in that direction. We're all going to go through hiccups. We're all going to have bad days, but drive yourself forward with this positivity. So that's wonderful. Okay, step 2, practice positivity. Step 3
would be the practice of self-compassion. And this is something that I think that is just not taught out there. Like we're really good as humans to being compassionate to other people, to animals, to our environment.
Hopefully, right? Hopefully we get a little bit more compassion out there. But yes, I agree.
I think it comes easier to do that. But when it comes to ourselves, well, I know for me, I was not good at that at all. I was my worst enemy. Anything would happen, I would be the first one to beat myself up over it. Like I had this massive inner perfectionist that expected me to be on point every single time. I wasn't allowed to make a mistake. And if it did, oh, heaven help me. I wouldn't say the things I said to myself, I wouldn't say to my worst enemy. And you don't realize how detrimental that is to your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-worth. A lot of times we take those 3 things and we think it's other people that affect them, and they can, but how we talk to ourselves and how we think about ourselves, I think has a much stronger message to those things. And it was to the point that it would actually make myself physically sick. So I had to learn to, again, not take myself so seriously and not take life so seriously, learn to laugh at myself a little bit, give myself a break, essentially, to go, you know what? I am human. I make mistakes. I'm not going to be perfect. And one of the things I did to do that was journaling. So when I had that moment where, I don't know, something just upset my day and I made an error or said something I didn't mean to say, I would sit down and I would just get all those thoughts and emotions out of my body. Because before that, like I say, I would internalize it and it was making me very sick. So you find a way, instead of beating up on yourself over something, find a way to get that emotion out. Now, whether it was writing, I also did another thing. I also did boxing. That was a huge thing for me because I have to tell you, there is something extremely satisfying about hitting something. And I don't mean another person. We're not going to, you want something that's not going to, that you're not hurting anybody else. But it was just a way to get that frustration out on an inanimate object instead of putting that frustration back on myself.
We are so hard on ourselves. There is so much that we internalize. And I got to tell you this quick story about my daughter this morning. We're taking her to school. She's getting an award today for perfect A's. You know, she's a straight A student. We're so proud of her. Yeah, very excited about her. What does she say to me in the car as we're driving? She says, I hope I don't have to retake math. Some of the kids in my class are 8th graders. She's in 7th grade. Some of the kids are 8th graders and they're retaking this 7th grade math because they failed it. And I realized here I have a daughter that's receiving an award today for perfect A's, and she's still beating herself up saying, I'm going to fail math. How do you go from A to F? And she just, in her mind, she can't get over that. And so I love what you're talking about. How can I help her?
Well, and the one thing that came to mind is kind of it's a practice that I used to do for from the gratitude part of it, but I just switched the perspective on it. And I'm still trying to find a good name for it because people don't like the idea of bragging, but I call it my brag wall. And what that is the fact that for her, she's not recognizing her achievements. And it was something that I still to this day, I struggle with. But what I do now is when I achieve something that I'm proud of, I don't care if it's big, small, or somewhere in the middle, I write it down on a little sticky note, and I have this place near my desk that I place it up. And on the days when I am feeling really down, that I feel like I've done nothing with my life, or I'm getting into that beat up on myself mode, I go and stand in front of my wall, which has all of the things all of my achievements that I've been proud of, and I read them over one by one, and I try to evoke the emotion of that moment and bring that picture in my mind back. And by the time I'm done, I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm not the beating up person. I'm not the failure. I'm not the whatever I was trying to tell myself. So I think that the learning how to really celebrate our achievements in the moment is so important instead of just constantly having this strive attitude. Because if we do that, what do we keep striving for? We're never going to know that we get there. We're never going to feel that moment of achievement and being proud of ourselves. Because you know what? We need to pat ourselves on the back every once in a while. We can't always expect the outside world to do it for us.
I love this. I think this is absolutely a game changer in my daughter's life, a brag board. She will love this idea. Thank you so much for sharing it. Okay, that's number 3, practice self-compassion. I want to go off on a tangent here and talk about journaling because it's so important and so valuable. And so many people roll their eyes when you hear you need to journal, but you got to. But I'm not going to take us down that tangent because I got to hear what's number 4 and number 5 on these 5-step process for us, developing, reigniting our passion here.
The big one these were all big, but one of the real big ones for me was the practice of self-care. Because again, I kind of grew up with always taking care of everybody else and not really even paying attention to what I needed and, taking care of myself at all. So after one of the traumas that I went through, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, so the PTSD. And that led me to being diagnosed with a stress-based chronic illness. The only way I found to be able to work through a lot of the symptoms that I was having is that I had to develop a very rigorous sense of self-care for me and figure out what does self-care mean to me. And I ended up developing my own, what I call the 7 pillars of self-care. Because a lot of times when you're looking at self-care, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just, going and getting a massage, getting a manicure, having a facial done, going shopping. They look at it at a very surfacey level. I take it deeper and looking at the physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional, which I call the 4 outer pillars, the 4 inner pillars. And then I have the 3 outer pillars, which deal with your environment, your social interactions, and then your career or your business. So whatever your goals are at that point. And each one of those, there are specific actions that you can take that give a little bit of self-care in each one of those. Now, do you have to do them every day? No, because we don't have that much time. But you want to, in a week, you want to be able to touch in some parts of those to feel that you are being nurtured, that you are being cared for, And it allows you to come from a position of abundance. And especially as a leader, where we're giving ourselves so much to the people or the corporation or something around us, we need to be able to refill our tank. I mean, we have to do that. And otherwise it goes to the detriment of ourselves. So when you really focus on different ways of being able to nurture yourself, you come from that abundance standpoint and you have way more to give and way more to serve to the people around you.
So self-care is not selfishness, and there's a distinction there. What I want to ask you, Sheila, then is a lot of the listeners to this podcast are men, and they're working a lot. Most of them are in a transitional period in their career where they're going from, do I want to do this? Do I want to do something else? Do I want to climb the ladder? And when we hear things, and this is stereotypical of us guys, I'm speaking for myself here, this self-care doesn't resonate with me. But then when you describe it as these 7 pillars, the 4 inner and the 3 outer, it really makes sense to me because we are whole individuals. If you've got one part of your life that is out of whack, it throws the rest of your life out of whack. And so what you're talking about is a balance. Self-care is balancing the competing needs that you have internally and externally to make sure that you're fulfilled in every area of your life. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, exactly. Because I'll say from what I see, men are really good you look at from the physical standpoint, from the physical self-care. You'll be the first in the gym. You'll be the first to take care of your nutrition and getting your sleep and being able to take care of yourself that way. But when you're ignoring some of the other sections, so you may be striving and being really great in your business or your career that you have going on, but if you're not nurturing your personal relationships, you may not realize that there is a ripple effect that will seep into your relationships at work. So you maybe some of the people that your employees or some of your management that you are working with. If you are not paying attention to how to communicate and how to nurture those types of work relationships, it's going to have the detrimental effect there. And you're like, well, my work relationships are different than my personal relationship. But if you're arguing with your wife or your children at home, it's going to show up in business. It's going to affect you emotionally and mentally. You're not going to be at your best. You're not going to be able to be on point when you're giving a presentation for your business. So it's when you can look at your life as in a holistic level so that you are all these pieces of a whole. They are all a puzzle that come together. They all interact with each other. And as much as men love to compartmentalize everything, these are aspects of your life. They bleed into each other. You can't keep them separate.
Okay, you got me convinced. I need to balance my life. All right, so.
Easier said than done. I will say that. It's not easy. It takes work. It does. I wish I could say that I could give you a magic pill and tomorrow it's all better. It's just, it doesn't, that's not life. That's not reality. But if you are committed to doing this, it doesn't take up any more time in your day. If you're thinking, oh, I'm too busy to do this.
No, I would agree with you on that. So our 5-step process, we got the practice of gratitude. We have the practice of positivity. We have the practice of self-compassion and the practice of self-care. Let's wrap it up with number 5, the practice of
uncomfortability.
Ooh, I love this. I know where you're going.
We know, we hear it all the time, the magic happens outside the comfort zone. That's where the growth happens. But it's really not easy to take that leap outside. Sometimes we, kind of peek our toes over that line. But sometimes, you need someone to give you the big push, and you need to do that big leap out of there. When I was first diagnosed with PTSD, I went into a lot of social isolation. I became somewhat agoraphobic. I had so much anxiety even leaving my house, even driving. There are days I had to pull over to the side of the road because I thought I was going to throw up just from the anxiety of being out of the house. And I started to shut down. But something inside me told me that wasn't going to be a healthy place for me. This is not what your life is supposed to be. You're meant for so much more. And thankfully, I listened to that because it would have been really easy not to. So then I had to find a way to drag myself out of that comfort zone. For me, it was, I had this, kind of like this pivotal moment And I think that all of us, at some point in time in our life, we're all going to have that personal or professional pivotal moment. It could be fire, car accident, illness, divorce, death of a loved one, something where we're going to be met with this opportunity for massive growth. And I had to find ways to force me to grow, because I can tell you, you're never going to be ready for it. You're never going to go, oh, I think I'm good now. I'm going to try to do this growth thing. You just have to do it, and it's uncomfortable, and you're going to have to place yourself in it. So what I would do, because I stopped talking, I stopped communicating, I stopped, being out into the world, I had to find ways to force myself to speak again, to force myself to be social. So I would send myself to networking events or different meetup events. I had to walk into a room where I didn't know a single person and actually converse with people. And for me, that was like death at that point in time.
For many people, it's like death. I mean, that's like going 0 to 60.
And it was, I would sit there in the parking lot in my car going, I just want to go home. I don't want to do this. And then the other part of me is like, get your butt in there. And, I was always thankful afterwards that I actually did it. I was really not grateful in that moment of having to put myself through that. But this constant pushing myself to stretch my wings, to what I call become your own version of the beautiful butterfly that I know we all have inside of us, but it's so much easier to keep her in the cocoon, well, him or her, into that cocoon, that we have to throw ourselves out every once in a while. Find something, it's like find that one thing every day that scares you and do it. Maybe it's, just going up to a person on the street and just going, hey, you look really great today. Complimenting people out of the blue may feel really uncomfortable for you, but it gets you out of that comfort zone, and you just gave someone a really great gift.
And one of the things that I think we need to do is we need to look at this like a train on the track. And that train is going to go anywhere that track goes. And when you talk about this uncomfortability, if you put your train on a track headed toward uncomfortability, you will get there. And I'll give you kind of an example. You signed up for these networking events. You paid the money. Now you set your track in that direction. That train's going to get there. You put yourself in situations where you're going to have to be uncomfortable. Now, it's easy to talk about networking and maybe giving a speech and doing some of these things, but what about asking your boss for a raise? Or what about going in and proposing a new way of doing business or something like this? Anything that fears you, gives you, makes you nervous, put your train on the track headed towards that. Then there's no turning, there's no deviating. You're headed right to it, and good things will happen when you stretch outside your comfort zone. Now, Sheila, I look at our time here. We're running just a bit low. I want to jump to our final section. That's our learning from leaders. And I want to find out some of the fun things that you're doing as far as reading and movie watching and so on. Are you ready?
You betcha.
All right, let's jump over. How about the book currently on your bedside table or Kindle?
Well, I'm not one to, because I live in the personal development industry, I don't read much fiction unless it's Dan Brown. And Dan Brown just came out with his most recent book of Origin. And it only came out like 2 weeks ago, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. And yeah, so that's the one I'm passionate about right now.
Okay, I've read every Dan Brown book. We were in Rome a couple of months ago. We did the Angels and Demons tour where we went around and saw.
I'm so jealous.
It was awesome. Do I need to read Origin?
Yes.
It's good.
Oh my goodness. Because again, you're back with Robert Langdon, and it's another one, and it's going to challenge some thinking. I'm not to the good juicy part yet, but I know it's coming.
I'm going to pick it up. Sounds wonderful. How about the best movie ever made?
You may laugh at this one because it's a kid's movie, or it was meant for children, but it's Inside Out.
And that movie is so powerful. My daughter just came home she was at a play date the other day. She came home. She said, we were watching Inside Out. I can't believe how sad that show is. And I said, it's very intuitive for a 9-year-old to kind of see that and learn those emotions. I think it's a wonderful movie. Thanks for sharing. How about your leadership superpower?
Well, if you haven't done it yet, take Jake's quiz that he has on his website. And I did that. And I was like, woo, it's what I thought. So I was quite happy. I came out as inspirational.
And what jumps out to me as so neat about this, and I think you're inspirational as well. And I love the podcast, Reignite Your purpose. And it's funny that you talk, not funny, haha, but it's interesting and intriguing to me that you talk about going through this period of down that you had to climb out of, this journey that you went on with PTSD and so on. And now you're talking about my superpower is inspiration. Not only do I not fear speaking, but I get up and podcast. I'm a communicator for a living. I just think it's wonderful, the reigniting that has happened within your life. And I think the inspiration superpower tags you perfectly. I love that.
One thing that's always been very paramount for me is lead by example. And I think that just sums up what an inspirational leader is.
How about your motivational quote, mantra, or philosophy?
Well, one of the mantras that for me, my own personal one that I try to follow is your past doesn't determine your future, but your mindset and your attitude does.
Put that train on the right track. How about the best business book ever written?
Oh, best business book. Now, let me say, my business is all about, I'm very on the empathetic, intuitional kind of thing. So it's not going to be a traditional business book. I'll have to tell you that. And for me to try to do the best one ever written is like saying, which child is your favorite? But I would say for right now, at this moment, for me is, and like I say, some people are not going to view this as a business book, so it just depends where your perspective is. But Danielle Laporte's White Hot Truth.
And the amount of lives that she has changed is absolutely remarkable. It's incredible. She has had a hand in so many startup successes that she's definitely talking a language that people understand.
Well, and in this book, like I had aha moments in every chapter because she's really pulling back the veil on some of the not so great practices that are out there. And it's things that I resonated with that I've been feeling. And I'm like, yes, somebody is finally talking about this. And I just loved her complete vulnerability and truth that she was putting out there.
Well, Sheila, we are all on fire. So excited to have you as a guest on this episode of the podcast. Before we let you leave today, how about a last bit of advice? And then how can we get in touch with you, learn more about you, your podcast, and what you're up to?
Sure. The last little advice I would leave is, find a way to up-level your abilities. I find it's very rare that we can reach our full potential on our own. And you know what? We're not meant to go through life alone. We are meant to work together. And I have a belief that, they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I think it takes a village to raise an adult as well. So be curious, find a program, hire a coach, find a mentor, find somebody who is going the direction that you want to go and learn what they have learned. Find a way to just up level in some way to keep you in that constant moving forward. Now, how to find me, the best, of course, is always on the website on reigniteyourpurpose.com. I'm a big social media person, so for more interaction, best to follow me on Facebook and Instagram or on the podcast again with reigniteyourpurpose.com. And can I just do one little self-promotion?
You
Shameless
bet.
plug?
Yeah, here we are.
One thing that's very important for me when you're talking about leadership is leadership of self. I believe that we have to be leaders in our own life before we can be true leaders out in the real world. And at the end of this month, I am launching my 6-week online program that goes through a lot of skills of how you can become a leader in your own life and take control and take responsibility for a lot of the things on how you show up in the world. So that's it's called O-Shift, how to change your life with a little F in shift. And as you can tell, I have a little bit of a warped sense of humor. So, so I like being a little cheeky. But yes, it's like I say, if you want to find a way to up-level some of your own personal skills, have a look at that.
Wonderful. And that's just on your website?
Yes. Yeah. Just go to reigniteyourpurpose.com and you'll find all the info.
We will link all of those up on the show notes. Again, Sheila, can't thank you enough. I hope you have a great day, and so do our listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me.
Big thanks to Sheila again for coming on the show and talking to us about reigniting our purpose. And the thought that kept coming to my mind as we had this discussion is, I used to do a lot of camping. And, you let the fire burn down at the end of the evening and you throw some dirt over it and to make sure that it's out. And then you go to bed. In the morning, you wake up you kind of dig up underneath that dirt covering. You find some of those hot coals. And you start to stoke that fire again. You throw some wood on it. You may throw some paper on it. If you're with the scouts like I was, you throw a little lighter fluid on it, and you get that fire going. And I look at that in relation to us reigniting our purpose. Maybe in your life you've had an experience or you had experiences that have really dwindled your flame. You're not as excited about what's going on or about what your opportunities are at this very moment. And so my challenge to you is this. What can you do to dig up that little ember? What can you do to add paper or wood or lighter fluid to your purpose and your passion and really go after it? Really go and seek completion of the goals, the things that really mean a lot to you. We talked about 5 ways, 5-step process to finding and reigniting your purpose: practicing gratitude, practicing positivity, practicing self-compassion, forgiving yourself. I love that idea of the brag wall. Practicing self-care, which is really just being in balance with the many things in your life, internal and external. And then finally, practicing uncomfortability. Go out there and do what scares you. And I've shared in the past my secret. What I do before making a cold call, before going into a room where I don't know anybody, even going on stage before presenting to a group, is I count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is how I get my train on the track. It is now heading to the station, and I will accomplish what needs to be accomplished because I've set in motion that activity. And so my challenge to you is do what needs to be done to get your life in balance and reignite that flame, that passion, that purpose. Go out there and do amazing things. Of course, everything we talked about, including how to connect with Sheila, is over on the website, jakeacarlson.com/ML45 for episode 45. That is the house of everything. You can find it there. And until next week, I want to wish you the bestest of days, an even better life. Go out there. Stay awesome. Thanks for listening to the Modern Leadership Podcast. You can find me on Facebook at Speaker Jake, on Twitter at Jake A. Carlson, and of course the website, jakeacarlson.com. See you there.